My name is Tom Cooney, and I am Professor of Entrepreneurship at TU Dublin. Welcome to our series of talks for people with disabilities who are interested in starting their own business. During this series, we will be talking to people with disabilities who have started their own business to discuss their entrepreneurial journeys. We hope that these talks will encourage you to think about starting your own business. Enjoy the conversations. Today I'm delighted to welcome Máirín Ní Bheacháin, who has started two businesses. Before we get into the businesses, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, before we get to the business startup stage.
Okay, so I grew up in Dublin. Growing up, I was interested in lots of different things: reading, writing, sports, art, knitting, sewing, all kinds of things. And actually, I kind of felt like possibly I couldn't settle on one particular thing. I thought maybe there's something wrong with me, or other people seemed to have a clearer career path, and that was something that I never really had. And when I finished secondary school, I took a year out, and I ended up going to live in France, studying over there. Still didn't know what I wanted to do. Came back to Dublin, decided to go study English and French in Trinity. Did that. Still didn't know what I wanted to do. I went travelling for a couple of years. Loved that. Came back to Dublin, still not knowing. Decided to start studying. Actually, I was working in as front of house or waitress as well in a restaurant in Dublin. Studied by night here actually. It was actually marketing and advertising. Did a nighttime course while I had gotten a job in a design and marketing company, but I was kind of like one of these general managers, like an office manager. So I was studying here by night, worked my way up, became a project manager, did that. And then in the end, when I was about 24, 25, I decided I would go back to do teaching, primary school teaching, and it's in the family. I fought it, tried, anyway, ended up going back there and did that for about 16 years until I became ill. So in 2016, I was diagnosed with a rare condition called Moyamoya. It affects the flow of oxygen to the brain. It's degenerative. I was delighted to sorry to go back, I'd been unwell for the previous 5 years, but not knowing why. So I was in and out of doctors and different specialists and going for brain scans and clinics. So it took 5 years, and then I'd been for a brain scan. I was in the classroom, my phone rang, and my doctor said that I needed to go straight to Beaumont. So myself and my husband went straight there, and then it feels like I had a diagnosis within about an hour. So that was my first time hearing about Moyamoya. And then they said, well, it's degenerative, there's no cure, the only treatment is brain surgery. So I stayed in hospital that day, had brain surgery, took about 9 hours. During the surgery, I had a stroke. So when I woke up, I couldn't speak, but was elated that I was going to see we have 2 kids, my husband and my family again. And then I spent a month in Beaumont, then realised, well, I can't actually read or write. Somebody handed me a fashion magazine. I've always been really interested in that. So that was that. What can you do? So I stayed there for a month, and then I came home, and that's when my recovery began. So it took me 2.5 years to learn to speak and read and write again. And then I started this next part of my life.
The nature of Moyamoya, was it something that existed within you that for some time and then kind of evolved into kind of manifested itself, or and then what are the symptoms and what are the kind of particular types of challenges does it present? Because it's not a term that we hear very often.
It's quite rare.
Yeah.
So you asked me then, what are the symptoms? Is that what you asked? Yeah. So for me, it presented in loss of weight, changing the colour of my skin, difficulty pushing a buggy, cycling a bike, just kind of feeling tired and everything was harder. Oh, and then I got chronic migraines, quite debilitating ones. I took up meditation because that really helped. And then dramatically, then I would start to lose the power all down my right side. So I'd literally be walking and then just go numb. Sometimes I couldn't speak. And all the while I was trying to teach and raise my children. And looking back, I was actually having like little mini strokes. So I was in a stroke clinic. They didn't detect anything. I was misdiagnosed with something else. Took medication, didn't work. So in the end, I ended up taking a year off because I just couldn't continue. And I actually went to a psychotherapist who was amazing, helped me in loads of ways, but in the end, that actually wasn't the issue. So it was only when I got the diagnosis, and they can't fix it, but they can manage it, and they opened up my skull and they tried to create diffuse little tiny vessels to help the oxygen flow more freely.
So it's blockages, is it?
Blockages, yeah. And I had 50% blockages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you come home.
Yes.
You have a disability that now needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I should clarify that when I had the stroke, the parts of because actually physically I'm quite good from the Moyamoya. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is degenerative, it has its risks. For me, high blood pressure is the worry at the moment. But on the stroke side of things, it's the parts that were affected were reading, writing, numbers, language. I lost all of that. So anything to do with, I have some memory issues too, but I didn't even know what ABC was, or 1, 2, 3, that whole area was just wiped. So I literally just had to learn that again from scratch.
And how did you do that, Maureen? What was the process then?
Yeah. It's difficult. So I found it difficult. I can only tell my story. Everyone's story is different. I couldn't have done it without my mum. So I left Beaumont and we actually hired a private tutor who would come to the house once a week, and we literally started with learning the alphabet. And then my memory is a little bit, patchy, but I feel like it took a good few months before I could link up with Bagot Street Hospital. So I went to a physio there and a speech and language therapist who was amazing. So I do weekly visits. She'd give me my homework. Myself and my mum would do an hour and a half homework every single day. I was exhausted and I'd have to sleep for about 3 hours after each session. And when you have brain surgery, it's like they take your brain, they shake it up, mix it up, give it back to you with different parts missing and in different order, and it takes time for it all to settle. So when I came back home, doing very simple tasks like making a cup of tea was difficult. but I became more and more used to it and more able. Even getting a bus into town because I couldn't read the numbers, everything was difficult. But after about 2.5 years, I had recovered enough to be able to read and write, not perfectly. I studied English and French. I love languages, so I can't read for pleasure anymore, but I linked up with NCBI, so I use the technology for the blind, which helps me. The brain, my brain anyway, there are days where everything's great, and then there's other days where your brain's tired. So there's times I try not to use the technology very much, because I think it's like a muscle. The more you practice, the more you can kind of keep on top of things. So I don't know if I'm going answering your questions.
No, that's perfectly. And the learning then of the language and the numbers, and how did you cope mentally with having to start over again in terms of all of that learning? Where were you mentally with that?
Mentally, it's funny looking back, so it's like 9 years ago now. My kids were small at the time, so I just got stuck in, to be honest, because I had all the motivation in the world to do it. And actually, when my son was starting junior infants, we were learning together. So I didn't feel like I did have a choice, but that never entered my mind. Not engaging didn't enter my mind, because I wanted to be part of my family. I wanted to be a useful part of my family. And then later I wanted to be a useful part of society. So I didn't look at it, I just kind of got on with it, I guess, with a lot of support.
And then at what stage, Máirín, did you think about employment or self-employment?
Yeah.
And about you earning again?
Yeah. Well, I'm a bit of a go-getter. I always wanted. I don't like sitting still and just doing nothing. I'm always wanting to strive and to improve and to learn. So, when I was after the brain surgery, I had a lot of time to think. And I think I realised that I wanted to do something creative. For me, this was actually my chance now. So, I knew I was never going back to the classroom. I wasn't sad about it. I just was like, right, well, what am I going to do? So, before being, I guess, discharged from Blackett Street, one of the things I had to do this in terms of like pension and disability. I needed to be assessed. So I underwent 3 weeks of neurological testing, which actually was really difficult, because there's something about seeing it in writing, the parts of your brain that are damaged and the parts that are not. I found I got quite down for about 3 or 4 weeks, because I thought, oh my God, like what am I going to do? How am I going to come back? So, over time, I realised that I was really good. I'm really good visually. I'm strong visually. I can speak, and I have lots of empathy, and I've always been interested in psychology and things, and I've always been really interested in fashion and styling. I was thinking maybe this is something that I can start to do. And actually, it was my sister helped me write a letter. They're called Dress for Success, a worldwide organisation that help women get back into the workforce. They're now called Work Equal. So she helped me write a letter to them. They took me on as a stylist. So that was kind of the beginning. From the moment I stepped foot into that building and my first session with my clients, I was hooked, and I knew that this was something I wanted to do. I was working as a volunteer. I still work there now. But about 6 months later, after lots of different things coming together, I started my own personal styling business. And I haven't really looked back.
So fashion and that sense of styling, that was always an interest of yours growing up and right through. So this was an interest that you were now bringing into.
My brother and my sister are both graphic designers. It's kind of in the family. I was always good at art, but I think I was a little bit afraid. I was strong academically as well. So I always thought there was always a little pull between the two.
Yeah.
So I guess I looked at it as a way to actually scratch that itch, you know.
And the work equal, you were saying that was a voluntary capacity.
Voluntary, yeah.
Yeah, and that, how many hours per week would you have worked with them?
I think it didn't actually work like that. It was more whenever they had clients. So I would go in, I wasn't based there full time or anything. They would say, are you free? Can you come in? We've got 5 or 6 clients this week. So I would dip in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with that work equal, the people you were working with, was it, were you focused only on personal style, or was there other work such as confidence building or that personal development side? Was that part of your remit as well, or
no? They have people doing those other side of things. Much later they took me on, and I took part in a program, delivering a program for people who were starting again, like me. But I was always on the styling side, and a little bit on the confidence side. I'm taking, because basically I feel like it's like a new beginning for me. So just looking on a lot of these people who were becoming involved, they were starting again. So it was just a little bit about confidence and style and sharing my knowledge of how I got back into work.
So then the jump from the work with Work Equal to setting up your own business, how big a jump was that for you?
How big a jump? It was. This is a hard question to answer because it involved. I was getting social or welfare benefits, so I had to go through them to ask them to get permission to be able to apply for partial capacity. So I made a deal with them. We made a deal. I could keep 50% of my benefits, and then I could earn whatever I wanted myself. At the start, obviously I took a big loss because you don't just build up clients. So it took probably about 2 years. But for me, the independence was really important because I didn't want to sit on benefits for the rest of my life. I wanted to be useful and to be part of society and to do something that I really loved. So that was tricky for a while. Again, my mum did most of the paperwork and all because it was really challenging. And I often wonder about people who don't have supports like the supports that I had, or people who are new to the country where you don't have necessarily fluent English. I found it very, very difficult to negotiate, but we did it. And then I'd say I drove my family insane because I was starting everything again. So with my husband, I was like, what's Instagram? Can you help me? So little by little. And then I would join networking groups. I did a start your own business course. I think it was like a 5-day course. And just over time, I started to get clients, and then gradually it built and built and built.
And was your intention at the beginning that the business would be full-time, or would it be part-time?
I think I always thought of it as part-time because I guess I have to be aware, I have to be a little bit careful myself because I have to take things like tiredness into consideration. I wanted to run it around my family because we had a young family at the time. And yeah, so I'm not just like your normal able-bodied person. I do have my own challenges, my own physical and mental challenges.
But I think that's really interesting because it's generally perceived that self-employment must be full-time, permanent, right? But the reality is that part-time self-employment is an option, right?
Yes.
And that, you know, and it may be more suitable for people given their particular circumstances, but also it allows people to generate money in addition to welfare, because you can actually earn up to X amount of money, you know, and still retain your benefit, right? Some people have problems with partial capacity benefit. I've heard people argue about the problems with it. What were your experiences?
Oh gosh, I guess you probably actually need to speak to my mum because she did most of it. But I just know, I just felt like I had to fight tooth and nail for it, which I found just strange because otherwise it would have cost them more. So the idea of having to fight for your freedom, for your economic and your mental freedom, I found that really challenging and really difficult and oh gosh, kind of exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Frustrating?
Very frustrating because there's all these different parts. You know, there's the benefits people, but they don't talk to the partial capacity people. There's no joined up thinking. And it's like as if they make it really, really difficult. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but it's almost like they make it so difficult for you to get the information that you need. Yeah, absolutely exhausting.
Mm-hmm. One of the challenges I see with the system is that I would describe it as a binary system, in that they see it as people can work or cannot work.
Mm.
That it's like one or the other,
Mm.
right? Whereas the reality is that it's a continuum.
Yeah.
That people move over and back, because there may be times where you can work, and there may be times where you can't work, right?
Well,
and that movement is not allowed.
No, there's no movement because I would be too afraid. Even if my business, like it did during COVID, everything stopped. There was no way in hell I was going to go back to them to look for any support, because then the paperwork would have been an absolute nightmare. So I said nothing, took the hit, and then that's actually I mentioned, I don't know if I did mention actually, so my two businesses are MoStyle, and then the other one, because that all stopped during COVID, pretty much overnight, I started another business called Mise Collars, which is where I designed basically collars, because I was dealing with a lot of women on the screen. That's how we were communicating, and I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had an accessory that could bring a bit of style, glamour, colour to the screen, because that's all we were seeing of each other. So I came up with the idea of Mise Collars. So I was the designer, but I can't feel 3 of my fingers. So I got a maker on board. So we worked together to bring Mise Collars to life, and it was great fun. It was great. It got me through. I think it was 2020 and 2021, I think. And then once things settled down again, I went back to my first love, which was the styling.
And Mise Collars, is it still?
No, I loved it. I still get requests, but I wanted to go back focusing on my styling. So I style men and women, and I work styling TV ads and things like that. I do a little bit of speaking, not too much, but those are the things that I'm more interested in.
Okay. So your business MoStyle is targeted at men and women?
Yes.
Okay. And the personalized styling that you, when you're working with people, is it online or in person?
I do some online, and I did some of that during COVID, which was fine. It's harder for the client, it's harder for me, but the way I like to work now, and the way I work 99% of the time, is face-to-face. So we might have a phone call or a Zoom, and then we'll make a plan. I have like a style report, I can send it out, depending on, some people are interested in wardrobe edits, some people are in just finding a new couple of pieces for like a job interview or whatever. So it depends on the client's needs. But yeah, personal shopping and wardrobe edits, they're pretty much.
Okay, and is it that every client then is different in that, you know, someone might say, okay, I want a different look, or would somebody say, I'm going to a wedding and
you know, so it's kind of like, I work with a lot of corporate people, so it's you know, so I'm starting a new job, I need to find some new pieces that will suit my role and my look and my level of seniority, and then other people might be saying, oh, you helped me in the past, could you help me find a summer wardrobe? Or some people could be attending an event, some people are stay-at-home parents, others are entrepreneurs like me, so it really, really varies.
And does the look just focus on the clothes, or would that incorporate, say, hairstyles and facial looks and so forth?
No, if I'm asked, I'll give an opinion about hair or makeup, any of that stuff, and I can usually direct people to experts on that field. But I deal more with the looks, the clothes, but for me, it's all to do with confidence and personality, because I think we all need to present ourselves to the world, but we need to feel like ourselves. And I think it's really important to be able to give a bit of your personality in what you're wearing.
Where do you find clients? How do they find you?
So networking, I guess, and then my website it seems to be working very well.
Your website is?
It's MoStyle.ie, and then I'm on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and then networking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what percentage of your clients would be men as opposed to women?
Probably about, I'd say about 70% are female.
Okay.
Yeah.
Age group, out of curiosity?
From 30s all the way up.
Okay.
Yeah. Up to like 60s, 70s. Yeah.
And for how long then, Máirín, would you work with them? How many sessions would you have? Or again, does that depend on?
It depends on the client,
Okay.
So like a wardrobe edit typically takes between 2 and 4 hours. Sometimes you have to go back for a second one. Personal shopping trip can be between 2 and 5 hours. It really depends on the items that the person is looking for. Sometimes I'll research them online, because in Dublin we're limited enough with the brands that we have. So there's brands I work with around the world that I know well and I can recommend. So it usually ends up being a mix of what we have here in Dublin in the shops and online. So it usually is a mix of.
And so therefore most of your clients are in the greater Dublin regions?
Yeah, I travel all around the country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The work then that you do in terms of valuing yourself, like pricing must have been challenging at the beginning.
Yes.
How did you overcome
Yes,
that?
and that is definitely key, because at the start you throw everything at it, all your energy. It's like it just kind of becomes all consuming. But my family reminded me too, it's like it does take a while to get the balance right. And yes, valuing your time. I found that quite hard, and the price that I started with, I have upped it because over time I've realised the amount of work and hours that go into it. I was undervaluing myself at the start, but I would say to people who are starting again, try to avoid undervaluing yourself, because it's harder to increase than it's easier to decrease than to increase, I think.
Yeah. But I suppose people are charging low to begin with to get the work.
I know, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I did that too.
Yeah.
So I did it for a while, but it just, I guess it's confidence and knowing your worth.
Yeah.
After a while.
Yeah. Because again, people perceive price equally in quality, don't they? But if you charge more, then you must be better, even though that's not necessarily true, right?
Yeah.
But so in building your business then, creating a website obviously was one of the first things you needed to do. What other challenges, like you talked about pricing, what were the other challenges that you found in getting the business up and running?
Well, I find I can only speak for me, but I find since my diagnosis and the stroke, things take me longer, much longer. So that is my reality. So that's what I have to deal with. So what another person might do in half an hour might take me 2.5 hours. So I just live with it, I get on with it, I do it, I ask for help. Growing up, I would have been a very independent person, I still am, but I would have been very shy or unwilling probably to ask for help because I was so able. But when you're not so able, it's a hard one, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is, it's reality. It doesn't diminish who I am, my personality, my ability to support others. It's just different. But yeah, I've had to ask for a lot more help than I would have ever wanted. But again, that's my reality. And usually I find people are happy to help, and if you don't ask, you don't get. So.
But I think all the best entrepreneurs in the world will always say it's a team effort.
Absolutely, yeah.
That nobody can achieve success on their own.
No, absolutely not. You need really good supports around you. Yeah.
With regard to your interactions with enterprise agencies, with regard to welfare departments, with regard to your clients, did you have struggles in terms of how to present yourself?
Yep.
And how did you work your way through that?
Yeah, I think that's something I'm still working on. And now it's like 8 or 9 years since my surgery. So when I was starting my website, I did a part A and a part B. So part A was MoStyle, and part B was all about my challenges, my new beginnings, my speaking side of things. So I kept them, they were both there because I didn't want to hide who I am, because I think my experience has created the type of stylist that I am. I think they both work hand in hand, but there is that feeling or that fear of being judged or being treated differently, or being seen as disabled, or being seen as somebody, she mightn't be able to do the job as well as somebody else. So I do find that challenging, and I come across it all the time. You know, I really have to think, who am I going to share my information with, or who am I not? So I find that quite hard. Where to place myself and how honest to be. And I didn't want, like I said, I didn't want to hide what has happened to me. So like on LinkedIn, my hashtag is like a stylist with a story. So I'm a stylist, but there's a story. On my website, there's MoStyle, and then there's MoTalks. On Instagram, it's a bit of both. I feel the freest on Instagram because it's more my personal space. So yeah, I think that is something that definitely takes some consideration, and that's how I've managed it. Because you're at events and people say, "Oh, your story is your business is your story. You are your business." But you usually hear that from people who don't have disabilities. So it's easy to say that, but the reality is a little more complex, I found.
And you talked about it influencing who you are as a stylist.
Yes.
and how it influenced your work.
Yes.
Tell me a little more about that. Like, how do you perceive that it influenced your styling?
Well, I just think it's almost when something has been taken away, your other skills become more honed. I found anyway, because I'm so reliant on visuals more than the written text, and so for me, the visuals and listening to things, they are key for me. It might sound strange, but it almost feels like I've become more in tune with, I guess, the visual. Clearly, because that's my business now. And then emotionally, I feel like I've probably become a better listener. Although people always think that they're amazing listeners, but I feel like I'm able to empathize, put myself in someone else's shoes more easily. And for me, one thing I've learned from this whole challenge is life's for living. Life is short. It's about having the confidence to be who we are, whether that's through clothes or whatever you're doing. But I think it's really important to really live life and to not let anything stand in your way. So I guess that's what I mean.
And clothes are an expression of that.
They absolutely are an expression, and it's something that we all have to do every day, whether we like it or not, no matter your mood, no matter whether you're staying at home with your kids, or if you're in a boardroom or on a catwalk, whatever it is. It's just really important to feel comfortable and to feel in control of who we are and what I think that the trap is we often think it's all about us, but actually it's really more about what we're giving to others. By putting on, I don't know, a bright colour, you might actually give a little bit of joy or create a mood or a vibe for somebody else. And we are all social creatures, so we are all feeding off each other. So I just think it's important to take control of our message.
You're speaking of message, because that was kind of coming to my mind. Personal styling is a very busy industry. There's a lot of competition in that space. And you've differentiated yourself by saying, I'm a stylist with a story.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of create that niche then that separates you? Like in that, like, people are bound to say, what's the story? Like, so I'm trying to work out how you differentiated yourself from the big crowd that exists.
Yeah.
Through the mechanism of I'm someone with a story.
I guess my story, as in the Moyamoya, probably brought me, because I wanted to be vocal about Moyamoya because it's not very well known, and people who are having strokes earlier in life or younger in life. I wanted to give a voice to those people. So I went and probably generated a bit of publicity myself. Like I was, I had an article in, Sunday Business Post, I've been in the Irish Times, I've been on radio, I've been on television. And then when it comes to fashion, I guess my story probably elevated, and I probably used it in a way to get myself some publicity. So I've been in, the Tatler magazine, Image magazine, different things. But then the challenge after all of that, and I'm saying I used it, but I wanted to tell the story. But I think it's tricky because you don't want to be defined by your disability, and yet it's part of who you are. So it is a challenge. It is a challenging one, I find. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You are, yeah, because it's complicated, right?
It is complicated.
And it's, I suppose, the bottom line though is that if you don't produce results for the clients, then the story becomes irrelevant.
Yeah,
It might make an introduction.
Yes.
But you still got to produce the goods.
Yeah, and now that's the challenge has been. Sorry, that's what I wanted to say. So at the start, I got a little bit of leverage out of that, which I also wanted to highlight those issues. But now I'm kind of more flying solo because I don't want to use that anymore. I want to be just me. And this whole thing about, neurodiverse people with neurodiverse, there's been a lot of talk around that. But I'm very reluctant to make excuses for who I am or to use it as a crutch. It is a part of who I am. It is what it is. But it has, on the positive side, it has helped me to become, hopefully, a more compassionate stylist with maybe more understanding of the challenges that people can face. So I guess I'm not trying to create a niche for myself. I'm just trying to be me. But yeah, it is difficult. I mean, it's
a very fine line.
You're always trying to generate more business. It is. It's hard. Like I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always trying to, drum up more business. So you never rest on your laurels because you can't.
As an entrepreneur, what supports do you think could have helped you, should have been available, or were available, for somebody with a disability, that has additional distinctive challenges in terms of starting a business, as we have discussed? What could be done to support people with disability who want to start up their own business?
Well, I know the initiative that you're working on sounds fantastic, because actually having a mentor who will help and guide you would have been fantastic. I mean, even simple things like getting a mentor. I mean, I was trying to do it online. I couldn't always do it. I couldn't always get it right. So for me, you just kind of give up because you're like, it's so difficult. So actually something like, a dedicated program for people with disabilities who could maybe point out any of the hurdles you might come across, or financial hurdles, or how to deal with, social welfare or practical things like that would have really, really helped. Or even having somebody, because I'm always in a classroom feeling like the odd one out, because I'm the one, who can't read or write fluently, so I'm always scrambling to keep up with the able-bodied people. So even having a classroom where they would have acknowledged that my challenges would have been amazing. It didn't exist, as far as I know. So I would absolutely welcome what you're doing.
And what we're doing is the TU Dublin Entrepreneurship course, which is online which is customized for persons with disability. And yeah, because there is the recognition that people with disability have additional and distinctive challenges, and tailored support is needed, that this one size fits all doesn't work in this situation. Time to wrap up, but before we do, what advice would you give to somebody with a disability who's thinking of starting up their own business?
I would think if it's something that you really love or that you're really interested, I think it's definitely worth giving it a go. I was on welfare, so I did take a cut, but I did volunteer with Dress for Success to get a feel for the industry. I did start doing some networking, so I guess try to maybe educate yourself a little bit and put yourself into the field, and just to put your feelers out and do any learning that you can, talk to people, get any assistance that you can. Just be open to different programs, because there are a lot of things that are out there, and they're not necessarily expensive. So I think just put the feelers out, but always try to be true to your own voice. For me, it has really worked because I could build it around my family and my needs, so I can choose how much work or how little work. Now I can. At the start I couldn't, but now I can. So now it works beautifully for me. And to be honest, I never really thought of trying to get regular employment. I didn't see how I could make that work for me. I didn't think that I could be trained. So I built this out of a passion for it, but also for a need for it. And I wanted something that would work for me and my circumstance.
And were you ever afraid of failing?
Oh God, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I still am. There are different parts to the journey, but if you don't try, you don't know. So I think you just gotta go for it.
So that's a great way to finish. Just go for it. Máirín, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, because there's been so much learning in all of this, and I'm quite certain that people will have picked up quite a lot of really good lessons and nuggets. So thank you.
Pleasure.